Hi there, Declan O'Toole here, Select Real Estate. Are you a real estate hack? Let's talk a little bit today about house hacking. In this video, Patrick Quilly and myself talk about house hacking, how we've house hacked in the past ourselves, talk about the pros and the cons of house hacking. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about this in person, I'd be happy to speak to you about hacking your own home. Thanks very much. Again, Declan O'Toole, Select Real Estate. Enjoy the video.
Okay, fantastic. So it looks like we're live again. This is the Wicked Awesome Report, broadcasting every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Give us a comment, a like, a share. Head over to the Facebook page for Wicked Awesome Report and give us a thumbs up there. You'll be notified next time we go live. I'm Patrick Quayle, your host, and also your friend in the mortgage business here on the Wicked Awesome Report. Joined by my co-host Declan O'Toole from Select Real Estate. Good morning, Declan.
Morning, Patrick.
So we are going to talk about house hacking. So what is it? Should you do it? Should you not do it? What to be aware of? Real interesting topic, and it's certainly something that has been going on for a while. And I think in previous discussions, Declan, both of you and I actually have house hacked before we even knew that was a thing. So we didn't, create it ourselves, but we were certainly active participants in that movement. So what is house hacking? Well, in sort of a loosely defined term, it's a real estate investment strategy where you have tenants paying for your primary housing expense. So it's owning and living in a home and having little to nothing out of your pocket to cover those housing expenses. Sounds like a fantastic idea.
Is it?
But of course, with everything, there are pros and cons. So traditionally, I think that commonly a house hacking, in the current definition, when you think about that, how that came to be historically, was individual buying a multifamily home. So buying a 3 or 4 family, living in one unit, renting out the other units, and having the rent from those other units basically cover most, if not everything, when it came to the mortgage payments, taxes, and insurance, so that you're living essentially, housing payment free. In years gone by, I think that was a viable strategy. And in some locations, it still may be a viable strategy. But Declan, with the cost of real estate, and particularly multifamilies, we'll say in the Metro Boston area, compared to what the rents are, I don't necessarily know that sort of the traditional house hacking where you live in one unit, rent out the other 2 or 3 is really going to get you to the point where you're living for no housing expense. What do you think?
Yeah, so it's interesting, Patrick. I think part of it, yes, I mean, certainly the expenses have gone up. The expense of the properties have gone up as well. So, but the more I think about it, just really kind of dawned on me as we're thinking about this, a lot of investors are still house hacking. So if you're looking at a multifamily, for instance, actually, it doesn't even necessarily, it could even be a single. I very often when I'm looking for investors, I look at how many rooms there are, not necessarily how many bedrooms there are. For instance, if it is a 3, let's say it's even a 2-bedroom house or unit, and it's got 6 rooms, you might be able to add a bedroom. So part of that's because you're, technically there you're hacking, so you're adding some income to the property.
Yep.
The other one is, what's the ceiling height? How much space is in the basement? Sometimes you can add either extra space in the basement. So that could be your in-law suite, or you could add an extra unit. So yeah, so if you're talking about buying the property as is and keeping it as is and renting it out, it's becoming tougher and tougher to actually make an income. I think you have to, if you want to do this, you want to just look at what your options are to change the scope of what the property is.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So again, the traditional sense of house hacking may not necessarily be viable from a dollars and cents standpoint today, just because of the price of the multifamily homes and even single family homes. So doing some house hacking may involve changing sort of the bedroom count or the layout of the property, making some physical alterations to the property in order to hack it into getting a higher income. There may be, like I said, additional space in the basement or in the attic that you can convert to additional living space. Now, of course, the recommendation is, of course, go through all the proper authorities, get all the right permits to be able to do that, because if you do at some point want to sell the property, those physical alterations that you've made,
Going to show up.
yeah, they're going to show up, and they have to be dealt with. And of course, you also want to work with your insurance agent to make sure that you're properly insured for all of the living units that are actually under that one roof.
And then just looking at that, Patrick, you talk about the house hacking. So we've talked essentially about multifamilies. There are three that come to mind for me. The obvious one is multi, right? You're adding units. Oh, actually, we did talk about adding bedrooms, but within a multifamily scenario.
Sure.
But there's two others that I can think of off the top of my head. Of course, hacking's hacking. It depends. It may not be. It could be. You could also be putting a mini house out the back. There's lots of ways to hack a property. But single family is taking on roommates. And the other one I can think of is temporarily renting out your home during the year. It's almost like the Airbnb idea, but
Sure.
it's been around before Airbnb.
Sure. Well, so those two instances raise a couple of interesting concerns. So whether it be an Airbnb or it is a single family that you're occupying and take on some roommates and rent out rooms. So locally here on the South Shore, there was an instance where a young lady had purchased her first home, was not trying to do anything wrong from all accounts, but had taken on a couple of roommates just to help her with her housing expense, and was renting out some bedrooms, monthly. And again, it was a single family home, and being a young professional and having a lot of friends, there were people coming and going, and the roommates of the same age had, friends that were coming and going. So I don't necessarily think it was sort of, frat house, party central, Animal House style stuff that was going on, but in a more quiet residential neighborhood, just a whole flood of people coming and going. I think some of the neighbors had actually made some complaints at town hall to whatever the authorities were, and it came to light that she was renting out some bedrooms in the home, and I believe that the town ordinances basically deem that to be a rooming house, which violates a lot of the local zoning. And unfortunately, this poor young woman got into a whole bunch of trouble. Off the top of my head, I don't know what the final resolution was, but I know there were all sorts of town meetings about this to try to get the situation resolved. So the moral of the story is this young lady had no ill intent, wasn't trying to do anything wrong, just taking on some roommates to help with their housing expense. And as it turns out, sort of the extreme end of the I guess the legal or zoning opinion was that she was in violation of what uses could be pursued in that home, and was technically defined as being a rooming house, which is really disheartening because guilty as charged. I've done it.
If that's the case, I've run a rooming house and I lived in it.
Well, exactly. So before I even knew there was such a thing as house hacking, or that was a term, or that was a thing, I've certainly been an owner of property and have taken on roommates and have collected rent from those roommates. And again, not, no Animal House, frat party type, but as a young
That's
adult.
what you say, Patrick.
Yeah. So, but as a young adult, yeah, I certainly had a bunch of buddies hanging out, and it was a good time. It was fun while it lasted. I don't necessarily know that I made a huge profit on that. I certainly didn't live entirely, housing expense free, but it certainly did help offset what those housing expenses were. So Declan, what are you with that? That sounds like something that you may have you may be guilty as charged on that
Yeah.
front as well.
So I have done the quote unquote house hack, and by the way, I think it's Bigger Pockets podcast is what they coined the term house hack, which is it's
Exactly,
a
yep.
very good podcast. If anybody's not listening to this at the time, they can check it out.
Exactly. So when this show is over, you can go over to Bigger Pockets.
But I have done that again. I stumbled into it. First property I bought was a single family in South Boston back in the day, and lived in simpler times. Basically moved in. It was a 3-bedroom house, but it had a 4th room that wasn't being used as a bedroom, but really was a bedroom. So, and then the largest bedroom was very large, so it became 2 bedrooms. So I had a 5-bedroom house, 4 roommates, and I actually made a decent profit on it. I was making $1,200 over my mortgage, so it paid for a few other expenses.
Fantastic. So perfect example of hacking the physical layout of the property to generate more income. So the house that I was referring to, essentially the same thing. Had some room in a walk-up attic, was able to convert that into additional bedrooms, and was able to take on some more roommates to help defray what the housing costs were. So again, it certainly is possible just on a single family to hack it in terms of just changing the layout of the property to bring in some roommates. And, it sounds great on the surface with having that additional income to offset the housing expense. But I don't want to be Nancy negative here, but there is some downside, So you're a landlord and you have tenants.
Right.
And if it's a multifamily, you have to account for what those repairs are going to be. And let's say if it's a 3-family, it's not just repairs, it's repairs times 3. So, those unexpected repairs and costs can really add up if it's a multifamily. So, and I think we talked about it on previous shows, Declan, just, budgeting and making sure you're putting enough money away on a regular basis to account for those repairs. You can't just blow through all the cash flow. You have to be a responsible landlord. And, that it's not for everybody. I mean, it's great. There's some potential for extra income in there, but being a landlord, not everybody is cut out for that.
Well, it's not just that. You've got roommates. So roommates are essentially tenants. If one or two of them decide that this is not the month to pay Declan because for whatever the reason is, you want to make sure that you've had enough, either set aside or that you knew you could take the hit of losing a tenant or two.
Yeah, exactly. So not that I'm a financial planner, but from a financial planning perspective, and definitely from the mortgage perspective, the way that I advise clients is, look, you're buying this multifamily, you're going to qualify for the financing using rental income from the other units, to help you qualify for that purchase price for that monthly payment. But on the ultra conservative side of things, you got to take a look at it and say, okay, well, what if one of the units or more than one of the units sits vacant? Do you have the financial capacity, either in regular income coming in or money you've put aside in the bank, that you can carry the entire note, the entire mortgage, without the benefit of any rental income? And if you're really counting on that rental income in order to make that payment every month, you really need to have it. That could be a recipe for disaster. You want to have some sort of financial reserves. You want to have the financial capacity to carry that if in fact the tenants decide not to pay or decide to move out. And, we're certainly seeing some of that right now during the pandemic with, people just not having employment, don't have the income, they can't pay their rent. And, the local, the state here has put a moratorium on evictions. So even if that tenant's not paying, you can't get them out. So even more so, you have to have the financial resources to be able to carry that. I don't want to say an emergency situation, but when push comes to shove, you're the one that signed those mortgage documents. You're the one that's responsible for making those payments. You got to make sure that you can carry it.
Patrick, kind of on the same, speaking about mortgages, speaking about affordability, I see with some of my clients, they might be looking for the single family home in a particular neighborhood. And it seems that they have more options as well. So, and again, this has changed a little bit going into Boston. The affordability goes down. I think a lot of it's because individual units now can be sold as condos, so the value goes up, therefore the price goes up. But there, it looks like, you'll have somebody, they can afford, just throw numbers out. It's, they can pay 400,000 for a single family home, but they get into a two family for 800, right? And or maybe a slightly bigger 800, maybe it's a little more with a three family. I suppose the question I have with you is, what kind of loans would somebody need there? I mean, are there specific, when you go from single family to multi, would you have any recommendations, or what's
Yeah, so a couple of things change. Most importantly, the down payment requirements. So purchasing a single family, believe it or not, there still are viable options out there for 100% financing. Most commonly, however, the low down payment options are really either 3% or 5% of the purchase price. But once you bump up to multifamilies, there becomes a real strict divide in terms of what the down payment options are. So without getting I don't want to muddy the waters too much with the financing options, but basically, if you're going for a conventional loan, when you're buying a multifamily, most cases you got to put at least 20% down. However, an FHA loan, Federal Housing Administration, even on multifamily up to 4 units, the minimum down payment is only 3.5%. So I see a lot of first-time home buyers, and again, it's not limited to first-time home buyers, but that's typically the loan product they'll gravitate towards because of that low down payment, and because they have an idea or a desire to house hack at some level. They're interested in buying a multifamily, but they don't have the cash available for a 20 or 25% down payment. So the default fallback position is an FHA loan, which you can put as little as 3.5% down, even as a 4-family. But the requirement is it has to be an owner-occupied property. So you have to live in one of those units. Now, when it comes to house hacking, if it's a multifamily, let's say it's a 4-family, okay? And you're going to live in one unit and you're going to rent out the other 3 units. Great. The potential rental income from those other 3 units, we can use a percentage of that to help you qualify for the financing, because obviously, a 4-unit property is going to come at a higher price tag than a single family. So to offset those higher, mortgage costs, we can use some of that rental income. However, here's one of the complications when someone's really aggressively going after the house hacking model. Okay. So if you're buying a 4-family and you're renting out 3 other units, great. We can use that rental income. You're living in 1 unit. And again, the aggressive house hacking model, the unit you're living in is a 3-bedroom unit. You're living in 1 bedroom and you plan on renting out the other 2 bedrooms to roommates. That's great. That's money in your pocket. That's real income that you're receiving. However, we can't consider that rental income from the unit you're living in to help you qualify for the financing. Just the way the underwriting guidelines are written, you can only count rental income from a separate living unit. You can't use rental income from the unit that you're living in. Now, with some loan programs, there are some variations where you can use rental income from a family member that's living with you in the same unit. And there's a whole slew of sort of if this, then that sort of requirements to go along with that. So it's a very thin slice of the population that's going to meet that. So the general underwriting guidelines are, yes, you can use rental income, but only from the separate living units, not from any bedrooms or whatever you're renting out from the unit that you're also living in.
Makes sense. So I mean, essentially, I suppose the bank is taking on, I won't say necessarily a bigger risk, but a different risk. When you move in, initially, if you're buying a single family home, right, in simple terms, they're betting on you. They don't know who they're betting on in the other unit. So I'd imagine that's why they have to take extra precautions.
Yeah, I mean, so they're still betting on you, but they're also betting on your ability to bet correctly on tenants.
Yeah.
So there's, multiple layers of risk there. So it can get a little bit more complicated buying a multifamily, but if you put the numbers together correctly, and again, leaning conservative, if push comes to shove, you know that you can write that check to cover the full mortgage payment, even if you're not getting rent from the other units. Well, then it's, I'd say more than likely it's going to be a viable, transaction for you.
Right, right. And then the other one that we touched on but didn't quite go there, but I was just actually, again, as you were talking, I was thinking about it. A number of people do it with their quote unquote second homes or vacation home. You go to a skiing lodge and you
Yeah.
pay a fortune every time you go up. Just as an example, that an obvious house hack is you go up and you spend your month up there skiing, and the rest of the year, and by the same token, the Cape or wherever else it happens to be, that the house hack there is you get your home, but you have somebody else to pay when you're not there.
Yeah, so that opens up a whole can of worms when it comes to mortgage financing, as well as taxable income. So certainly not a CPA, not going to give anybody any tax advice, but from the mortgage perspective, if you're buying a unit, buying a home, like I said, down the Cape, or
Yep.
or at a ski place up in New Hampshire, and you're putting together your mortgage financing, classifying it as a second home, you're going to get terms for financing that are specific to a second home. At the end of the day, I don't necessarily know if there's anything that a lender can do to stop you from renting it out in the future. But if you go to finance it again at some point in the future, you're looking to refinance that home, and on your tax returns, it shows that you're actually receiving rental income on that property. Well, guess what? It's not really a second home. It's an investment property. So that's going to come with some slightly different financing terms. So while I'm not against house hacking, not making a judgment call on anybody, whether they claim that rental income or not. I don't want anyone to fall foul of the IRS.
Debbie Downer.
You got to be careful. And a lot of people will just sort of jump into this and say, okay, well, it's I'll say an easy way, but it's a viable way to earn some extra income to offset those mortgage expenses. Well, that's all well and good on day one, on the beginning of it, but further down the line, that's going to have some consequences, and it may change the kind of financing options you may have in the future. So house hacking certainly plays a number of different, can play out to be a number of different ways, to look at it, different ways that it comes together, whether it be sort of the traditional, buying a multifamily, or, and using that rental income to offset or entirely pay for your housing expense for the unit you're living in. Or like I said, Declan, just going in and materially changing the layout of the property to hack it in terms of being able to generate more income from the units that are already there.
Yeah, in fact, I think we could even do a separate podcast on the numbers on that. In terms of that's you purchase. We're obviously not going to get into it here, or we'd be here for 2 hours.
So that's actually a good idea. Maybe we can put together a case study and put that out there in terms of obviously protect change the names to protect the innocent or guilty, and the property address maybe, but take a look at one specific property and see how someone has gone through that hacking process and what the net results were.
Right. That and just seeing what the prep work you could do. So it is a case study. So you can even look at it from the different angles you can take, not necessarily even how that person did it.
Yeah. I mean, every property is going to be a little bit different, but this may be just sort of a framework if someone's interested in that, pursuing that as an option. Here are, some of the things to look out for. So again, I think the big things to look out for are some of the local zoning ordinances. Is your house hacking endeavor going to be interpreted by the local authority as you running a rooming house? That's definitely not good. Does your local ordinances prevent you from running an Airbnb. Now, I don't know if necessarily in a residential neighborhood, a single family, there's going to be ordinances to stop you from running an Airbnb. But I believe, Declan, in a lot of condo complexes, nowadays it's actually written into the condo guidelines where you can't rent the unit, and more specifically, you can't rent it on a daily or a weekly basis, basically eliminating the ability to use Airbnb on some of those condo properties, which I think leans more towards, hey, if you are buying a condo and that is going to be your intention, you really got to read the condo docs and make sure you're not going to get stopped.
Yeah, that's become more and more common. It actually went from, funny, you had this bland template for condo docs, which you'll get on occasion, but then, as the years went on, I can even tell you where pets started getting at it. And then the other one was obviously you cannot rent out your unit. Never mind the Airbnb. And now it's restrictions, and very often it's a time restriction that you can't rent it out for more than 2 weeks or whatever the number is. But there's definitely a restriction there, and you certainly should look at that, get a better feel. Those condo docs could also change midstream after you've purchased it, so get a good feel for the complex if you're buying.
Well, exactly, yeah. So it's that's a good point. What happens if you've bought this condo unit on downtown Boston? Would be great for people coming in, sightseeing, vacationing, whatever, close to all the amenities. It's your intention to run it as an Airbnb. Condo docs currently don't prohibit that, but there's a change in the condo association, and they make some amendments to the condo association rules, and now you can't do that anymore. So again, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer, but and I guess that's one of the risks that you have to be comfortable with if, in fact, you are investing in real estate.
That's one thing I would say is it is a side note is if you buy a condo, try and get involved in the association.
Well, yeah. So great. Yeah, great point. So you can't necessarily control the outcome, but maybe you might have a voice and help direct it. So again, pros and cons, like there are with anything. You want to make sure that it's okay with the local zoning and ordinances, and particularly if it's a condo, you want to get involved with the board just to make sure that currently and in the future, nothing is going to be put in place to prevent you from pursuing a house hacking or an Airbnb type for rental income. And again, you got to sit down and you got to do the math. You have to put together your budget. You have to look at the numbers. If you truly, really are absolutely counting on that rental income coming in and coming in on time in order for you to make your mortgage payment, you could be setting yourself up for failure. I think that any investor, and if you're buying a multifamily, that's what you are. You're investing. I think any investor needs to put aside some financial resources to cover that, inevitability, because sooner or later there's a tenant that's not going to pay.
Right.
It's going to happen. So you just need to be prepared for it and know that you can cover what the expenses are without that rental income. Now it's great to get that rental income, and it's certainly an incredible way to grow your wealth through real estate. But it's, age old saying, hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
Yeah, and my thinking, I suppose, almost the closing note on it is the actually U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics is a 2015 number, and I think the number has definitely changed. That 19.2% of households that the 92% of those of the average household's expenses were dedicated to shelter. So now I think with things, it's probably gone up in the meantime, particularly in the current status. But I think that's why house hacks are always, there's nothing wrong with a house hack. You just need to go in with your eyes open.
Exactly. You got to go in there with your eyes open, know what your numbers are. Don't wing it. Don't hope everything is going to go okay. And knowing your numbers, you got to put money aside for repairs. Because again, on a multifamily, it's not repairs it's repairs times 3 or times 4, depending on how many units you have. And I've seen that unfortunately just really blow up people's budget, and repairs they hadn't expected. Well, I don't think anybody expects those emergency repairs, but they hadn't financially prepared for that, and it really creates some difficult situations. So it's planning, knowing your numbers, checking with the local zoning ordinances, and of course, working with a competent, local, knowledgeable real estate professional that can help guide you in some of that, and identify, property A, probably not so good for a house hacking, but a couple of blocks away or in the next town over, here's property B, which may be outside of the area you're looking at, but financially meets all the parameters to do what you're looking to do. So having a strong, competent local professional, and I'll point to you, Declan, to help a client do that is absolutely key. You got to have the right person as part of your team to help you find that property and make sure that it's going to fit the needs.
Right, and get the financing from you.
Well, I'm here to do that too. So here's your the beginning of your power team for everybody that's watching. So Declan, I'll tell you what, let's wrap it up. We've been going here about a half hour. So house hacking, some pros and cons, some good information to get started. I think future episode, we should put together a case study on what some of the numbers look like. I think that'll be interesting. And a good way for some of the viewers to really get started and sort of wrap their arms around what's possible. So watch for that on a future episode. And this has been another Wicked Awesome Report, broadcasting every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Give us a comment, a like, a share. Head over to the Wicked Awesome Report Facebook page. Give us a like there, and you'll be notified next time we go live. So until the next time, and Declan O'Toole from Select Real Estate, thank you for joining us as the co-host here.
Thanks, Patrick.
Patrick Quayle, your friend of the mortgage business. This has been another edition of the Wicked Awesome Report. And until the next broadcast, hope everybody stays well and stay awesome. Thank you.